Hello, AP Environmental Science students. In today's screencast, we're going to go over Chapter 1, Section 2. Chapter 1 is entitled Environmental Problems, Their Causes, and Sustainability. All of today's notes in this screencast are based on Living in the Environment, the 16th edition, by Miller and Spoolman. So Chapter 1-2 is fairly short, and it covers how can environmentally stable societies grow economically. The main idea of this section is that societies can become more environmentally sustainable through economic development dedicated to improving the quality of life for everyone without degrading the Earth's life support system. So the focus of this section is really economics here. So there's some key terms and vocab that you have to know when we talk about economic growth. So economic growth in general is an increase in a nation's output of goods and services. Economic growth is usually measured by gross domestic product, or GDP. GDP is the annual market value of all goods and services produced by all firms and organizations, foreign and domestic, operating within a country. Per capita GDP measures changes in a country's economic growth per person. So basically, to get per capita GDP, they divide the actual GDP by the total population at mid-year. Some additional key terms are per capita GDP, PPP. This is a measure of the amount of goods and services that a country's average citizen could buy in the United States. So PPP is purchasing power parity, and that's a tool economists use to compare countries' purchasing power. So how much could equal amounts of money from the USA versus maybe the euro buy within the United States? Economic development uses economic growth to improve living standards. So when we talk about economies, we also have to talk about the difference between developed and developing countries. These are terms we've all heard before. Nothing is crazy here with these terms, but just a little bit refresher. Developed countries encompass 1.2 billion people on this planet. Developed countries are highly industrialized, have a lot of technology usually. They have a high per capita GDP PPP, meaning our money goes a long way. Examples of developed countries are USA, Canada, Japan, Australia, New Zealand, and most of Europe. Developing countries, on the other hand, include 5.5 billion people on our planet. And developing countries are divided into two subclasses. First, we have middle income, which is our moderately developed countries. So these are China, India, Brazil, Thailand, and Mexico. And then we have low income, which are our least developed countries, like Angola, Congo, Belarus, Nigeria, and Nicaragua. These countries experience a higher population growth than most developed countries, and we're going to talk about why in Chapter 6 later on this unit. So the gap between the per capita GNP of the rich and the middle income and poor has widened. We have more than 1 billion people that live in extreme poverty and survive on less than $2 per day. Also, 1 in every 6 people is classified as desperately poor, which means they survive on less than $1 per day. So if you look at this figure, the richest 5% of households are here, the poorest 20%. So if you look as time has gone on, and I know this figure is a little bit older, but the gap continues to grow. The trend continues to follow the same basic pattern. So when it comes to economy, environmental scientists say that we should put more of an emphasis on environmentally sustainable economic development, which involves using political and economic systems to discourage environmentally harmful and unsustainable forms of economic growth. On the other hand, it wants to encourage those environmentally beneficial and sustainable forms of growth.